Hi and welcome to this video. It's September, which means it's time to talk about all the books that we read in August. And I realized I hadn't done a July wrap-up either, so I thought let's combine the July and August wrap-up into this one video. I usually do my wrap-ups in YouTube Shorts, but I thought it's been such a long time since I've done a sit-down wrap-up video, so let's do one today. Today we're going to talk about all the books that I read in July and August, which are quite a lot, as you can see. These are just the ones that I have physically. So I read a lot in the months of July and August. Let's talk about it. I started July off by doing another Read It or Unhaul It challenge, for which I read 5 books, I think. Quite a lot for one video. The first one that I read was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I don't know if you can hear this helicopter, but it's been circling around for so long. I'm not sure when it's gonna go away. I'm really sorry if you can hear it. If you can't hear anything, then forget I ever said anything. If you haven't watched that video yet, go watch it, because I'm gonna spoil right now that I decided to unhaul this book because unfortunately I didn't really like it. Now you might be wondering, Ilse, if you were gonna unhaul this book, then why do you have it in your hands? And that's a really good question. Now it might be fun to share a little bit of my plans for the upcoming videos of this month. A lot of you have been requesting more little free libraries, so I'm happy to tell you that September is going to be the month that I will visit more little free libraries and take this guy with me and hopefully find it a home where someone will enjoy it way more than I did. But yeah, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is a BookTok favorite. I have heard so many people talk about it, but unfortunately it was not a book for me. I really did not enjoy this. I gave you all my reactions and opinions in that Read It or Unhaul It, so if you want to watch that, I will link it for you. It's a book about a girl who makes a deal with the devil where she gets to live forever, but she will never be remembered. And I really liked the fantasy aspect. I really liked kind of the immortality and the commentary about it, but in the end it turned out to be more of a romance than a fantasy. I thought the romance was a little bit silly and I didn't really enjoy reading about it, so that's why I think I gave it 2 stars. So that's the first book that I read in July, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Okay, I just knocked over a glass of water over my laptop, so it's going great. This is actually the 3rd time in the past couple of weeks that I've knocked over coffee or water onto my desk, but this time it was over my laptop, so okay, anyway, let's move on. The next book that I read in the Read It or Unhaul It was Nietzsche, actually. I read Twilight of the Idols, which is a small book about Nietzsche's philosophies, and he's quite controversial at times. It was a fun read, quite small. I've already studied Nietzsche before, so it wasn't my first time reading Nietzsche. He can be quite blunt with what he's saying, but if you take it with a grain of salt, it's actually quite fun to read, in my opinion. Now, Nietzsche has said a lot of controversial things, so it was actually quite fun to read one more of his works. It was my brother's edition, so I just gave it back to him, so I don't have it anymore, but I'm really happy that I read it. Would I recommend it? If you're interested in Nietzsche and his philosophy, then I would recommend it. It's quite an easy read. It's not too dry, it's not too textbooky, but if you're not really interested in Nietzsche, I just, wouldn't really recommend it. I think there are more fun things to read. Speaking of more fun things, I read The Epitaph of a Small Winner, or otherwise known as the posthumous memoirs of cubas, which is this fictional work about a man who writes his own biography from the grave. So this man has just passed away, and he writes about his life, reflecting from it after he has passed away, which leads to a lot of funny and witty commentary, but also quite some bleak and dark and sad reflections, because if he's of course looking back at everything that he has done and accomplished, but also looking back at everything that he didn't got to do and everything that he missed out on and that he regrets doing. So there are a lot of funny moments in this book, but there is a lot of sadness as well, and that's kind of how I would describe this book. It's really funny, it's really clever, the writing style is so amazing. It's really good at tying these chapters together and making you invested in this book, invested in the characters you're reading about and wanting to know more about their life. So it has a really fun writing style, but it's also sometimes a bit dark and it can be a bit sad. Yeah, that's how I would describe this book. Funny, but dark. If you love dark humor, you love funny books, then I would definitely recommend this one. It has very short chapters, so it's really easy to get through, and I would highly recommend it. I gave this 5 stars because it was just so good. Then the next book I read in that video was Raveleijn, which is a Dutch children's classic about 5 children who go through a portal and they have to save the world, and they all have their own unique abilities. This book was written for a theme park here in the Netherlands, and they actually have a show about this story. So I read this one a long time ago, but I couldn't really remember the story because the show differs quite a lot from the book. So it was really fun to read the book that inspired the show of the theme park. This book also has really nice illustrations. I think these are just really nice and they really add to the story. So I really like this edition and I'm really happy that I read it. I think I rated this 4 stars. The story is quite lacking, but I think I'm a little bit biased because it's so nostalgic to me and I love the show in the theme park. This book is about Raskolnikov, and he is a law student who has some very extreme ideas on who should obey the law and who shouldn't. And he actually believes that he is one of those people who can rise above the law, that he doesn't need to be punished. So then he commits a crime and the police are on to him, and he realizes that he has to face punishment. It's a very good story about inner turmoil and who is right, who is wrong. Does the law apply to everyone in the same way? It's a lot about morality, also actually about double standards for men and women, which was really nice to read about. It's a really interesting book. I would highly recommend it. In my opinion, it's a little bit long. The crime happens in the first 100 pages. It's very fast paced, but then after that it just drags out so much, and so many unimportant people have monologues for pages after pages, and it drags a little bit in the middle. But I really appreciated this book. I'm very happy that I finally read it. I thought the topics were so interesting. I think this book is really good at what it's trying to accomplish. It's really good at making you feel a certain way because, as I said, the crime happens in the first 100 pages. After that, it's a really long wait until anything really important happens again. And I think that is done on purpose to kind of make you feel kind of the agitation and the inner turmoil of the main character. It's making you wait this long until another thing happens, which the waiting makes the main character kind of crazy. And I think having the book drag out so long is trying to make you feel a little bit of what he's feeling. So I think that's done very well. I would highly recommend this book. It's a classic for a reason. I loved it. I can't wait to read more by Dostoevsky. But that's for another month. The next book that I read is The Shadow of the Wind, and I cannot believe that I've waited so long to read this book. Definitely one of my favorite books of the year. This book is basically about a boy who has lost his mother. He then finds a book called The Shadow of the Wind, and there is not much known about the book. It's one of the only copies left in the world, and there's also not much known about the author. The author has disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and the boy wants to know more. So the boy goes on this adventure to try and find out what happened to the author, what happened to the other copies of his book, has he written more, what happened to those copies. And it's this whole mystery that takes place in Barcelona. It's this very gothic, dark, perfect for autumn vibe. The first chapters really reminded me of Harry Potter, and I just really could not stop reading. I read this in a couple of days. I was so hooked. I really wanted to know what the reveals were. Some of the reveals were so shocking. I was just completely amazed by this book. My only critique, I wouldn't even say that this is a critique, it's just my personal preference, is that a lot of women in this book really get mistreated and objectified. It's not necessarily a critique on the book. I really feel like it kind of shows the time that the characters are living in. I personally don't really like reading about women getting mistreated or objectified or, abused. And this book does have a lot of female characters who get treated that way. And I think its purpose is to show what kind of time these characters are living in. So it's not necessarily a critique on the book, just my personal preference. I have to give it 5 stars. I loved reading this. One of my favorite books of the year. Yeah, I'm really happy that I read it. I know there are more books in this series that I'm really excited to read now. So that is The Shadow of the Wind. In between those books, I read a non-fiction. I read the Introduction to Political Philosophy by Jonathan Wolff, I believe. I was really interested in learning more about political philosophy, and this book was actually recommended to me by one of my previous teachers, so I decided to read it. It's a really nice introduction if you want to learn more about political philosophy and its prominent philosophers. I don't think it really goes too in-depth. It really stays an introductory level, so I think that's really nice if you're a beginner and you just want to learn more about it. I didn't really read much that I didn't know previously, but it was a nice refresher on all the main theories of these philosophers, and it was kind of nice to read another kind of textbook again. A lot of what I read is fiction, but I'm also really interested in non-fiction, specifically philosophy, so it's really nice to be reading those things at home and learning more about these things outside of school. You can find a lot of recommendations online from professors or professionals, what books they recommend that you read at a beginner level or more advanced. So that's where I get most of my recommendations for nonfiction. This one specifically was recommended to me by a teacher, so I'm really happy that I got to read it, and it was a really nice book. If you're interested in that topic, I think this is a really good book to start with. So that's a recommendation from me to you. I actually read another nonfiction recently. I read Ocean by David Attenborough and Colin Butfield. This is similar to the Netflix documentary that came out, but it talks about different topics as well. It's not a one-on-one copy of it. This book combines facts about the ocean with personal stories from David Attenborough and personal stories from other people that have researched the ocean. This book really highlights the beautiful creatures that live in the ocean and how they exist and coexist together, and kind of how humans come in and we mess that up. It really has a dark tone because it talks a lot about how we humans negatively impact the environment and the ocean, but it also has a positive tone because it shows multiple examples of how humans have worked together to save the ocean and help the animals that live within. And it talks about what we can do as a society, as a city, as an individual to help the ocean. So this book has a lot of facts. It's very interesting, very informative, but it also has a lot of personal anecdotes and beautiful stories. So I would highly recommend that you read this. I think I gave this book 5 stars because it's so informative and inspiring, but it also doesn't sugarcoat what we as humans do and the damages that we can do to the ocean. It's very realistic about our negative impact on the environment, which I think is really good to talk about. I wish more people talked about that. But it also shows the positive impact that we can have and all the things that we can do to save the environment. So it's also very inspiring. I loved reading this. It also has beautiful pictures inside that really complement the story. So if you're interested about the ocean or the environment, then I would highly recommend that you read this book. I think it's a really good nonfiction, and I think it's very enjoyable to read. It's not too dry. It has a lot of fun personal anecdotes and pictures in it. Next, I read a book called The Doll Factory by Elizabeth McNeil, I believe. Wow. Okay. Is this better? The Doll Factory is about this woman who paints dolls, and she catches the eye of 2 men. One of them is bland and the other is evil. And that's basically the story. It's very predictable, very fast-paced, and it was not memorable at all. I think I rated the book 3 stars. It was a very fast book. I think I read it in a day. It was very forgettable. Wouldn't really recommend you read it. I borrowed that book from the library, so I'm actually happy that I don't physically own it and I just could bring it back to the library and I don't have to think about it anymore. It was a fine book. I mean, it wasn't bad at all. It was just not really memorable or enjoyable. Yeah. Sometimes you read those books. I also borrowed another book from the library. I borrowed Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and this was much better. It was really enjoyable. It was, again, very fast-paced. The beginning is very slow, but once you get through the beginning, the rest of the book is so fast-paced and interesting and heartbreaking. This book talks about Hamnet, who is a real person that has lived. He was the son of Shakespeare, but unfortunately he died at a very young age, and there's very little known about him. So this book is kind of a fictionalized version of his life, kind of speculation, what happened to him. So this book primarily talks about grief and losing a child. So it deals with a lot of heartbreaking topics, and I feel like it handled it really well. Of course, it's very sad, but the writing is so beautiful, and it really describes the topic, I think, in a very respectful way. It doesn't just sugarcoat the topic or ignore it at all. It really discusses the grief that comes with losing a child, and I feel like it dealt with the topic very respectfully, but in a way that the book is still entertaining to read. It's not too heavy. I'm actually matching with the book. I didn't realize that, but I had a very great time reading this. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. I'm very happy that I read it. Actually, when I started reading this book, the trailer came out for the movie, and I didn't even know that they were making a movie out of this book, so that's purely coincidence. But I'm not sure when the movie's released, this year or next year, but I'm definitely watching it. I'm really excited to see how they adapt this story into a movie. I would highly recommend that you read it. Now, unfortunately, they can't all be winners, because the last books that I read in August were Hear the Wind Sing and Pinball by Murakami. And these are two quite short stories, about 100 pages each, but it took me so long to read this book, because every time I picked it up, I got so annoyed, so irritated at this book that I just didn't want to keep reading. I actually considered DNFing them, but I really want to give them a chance, and these were quite small, so I did finish them, but I would not recommend them. The thing about Murakami is he has such a unique writing style that I really appreciate. I have never seen anyone write like him. I don't know how to describe it. It's so real and honest, and it really gives me kind of a glimpse into this other culture that I know nothing about. However, Murakami's writing is also very misogynistic. He basically has no good female characters. All the women that are mentioned are objectified, sexualized, and that was my major issue in Norwegian Wood as well. I've now read 4 books by Murakami. Norwegian Wood is my favorite, I think, but my main issue in that book is the female characters as well. None of the women have anything else going for them, and that was again the case in these 2 books. All the women that are mentioned, they're not even 2D, they're 1D, they're nothing. They don't have any character, they don't have any backstory, they don't have any reasoning for what they do. They are just there for the male character. And in Pinball in particular, this was really awful, because the main character lives with 2 women, they're twins, and he knows nothing about these women. He doesn't even know their name. And when he asks for their name, they say, oh, it doesn't matter. I just cannot excuse his misogynistic writing. Other than that, I think the writing is really good. And as I said, I've read nothing like that before. But the blatant misogyny is just something that I cannot ignore. I cannot excuse it. I cannot ignore it. And therefore, I don't really like his books. If you know any Murakami book that isn't so misogynistic, I would love to hear it, because this is just really not my thing. I think I rated it 2 stars, and this one as well. I had a really hard time reading these. So those were all the books that I read in July and August. We had a couple of 5 stars and a couple of complete missers, but overall I would say that I had a really good reading summer. Now I would love to know what you read this summer and what was your favorite book, and I'll see you in the next video.